participants are in listen-only mode.
Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to today's webinar entitled How to Use Mobile Technology to Boost Engagement Within Your Budget. My name is Drew Malmuth. I'm the Program and Communication Coordinator here at the National Guild for Community Arts Education. And with us today we have Jordan MacArthur from Guidebook and Elena Ouimet from the Boys and Girls Club. I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little more fully in a moment, but first I'd like to give a brief introduction. So during today's webinar, you'll learn about how to use mobile technology to boost community, client, audience, and member engagement, all while operating within your budget. We've scheduled an hour for today's webinar, and also we've added in lots of opportunities for you to ask questions, so please feel free to share them with us. Your line will be muted during the webinar, but if you'd like to ask a question, you can type it into the question box in the toolbox in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. At the end of the webinar, we will provide you with our contact information, so feel free to follow up with us directly. And please do not forget to take the short post-webinar survey, which will be sent right after we're finished here. Before I hand things over to Jordan, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about the National Guild for those of you who aren't familiar with our work. The Guild was formed in 1937, so we're coming up on our 79th year. A lot has changed over the years, but one thing that hasn't changed is our dedication to supporting our membership. We are the sole national service provider to community arts education organizations. We do this because we believe involvement in the arts is essential to individual fulfillment and community building. To ensure that all people have access to arts learning throughout their lives, we must work together as a field to create an environment that is more favorable to arts education. So thank you so much to everybody for being here today. And Jordan, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Great. Drew, thanks for that introduction. This is Jordan MacArthur here, and I work at a company called Guidebook. And one of my main jobs is to help organizations contextualize mobile app communication so that all types of groups can take advantage of the cutting-edge technology that we provide. And Elena, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elena Ouimet, and I'm a director on our STEM and Educational Foundations team at Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I've been with BGCA for about 12 years, and during that time I've worked in quite a variety of our programmatic areas, including the arts, and I know that we're also a member of the Guild, so big supporters of the work that you guys do as well. In addition to doing that programmatic work, we do a lot of conferences as a national organization, and one of my other roles is as our program manager for our national conference, which we'll talk more about today.
Excellent. I'm really happy to have you here, Elena. Thanks for joining us. As Elena said, we're going to be talking a little bit about her national conference today and how she was able to use mobile technology at that national conference. But, you know, I would just like to second Drew's introduction here and say that if you have a question at any time during the webinar, we are happy to pause and talk about it as a group here. So please feel free to type your questions into the question box, and we can answer them as we go. We will have some Q&A at the end of this presentation, but we don't mind answering questions along the way. And hopefully this will be some new information for the majority of you, and you'll have some curiosity about the things that we're talking about. So, you know, as we talk today, I want to answer three main points. The first of which is, you know, why do organizations go mobile in the first place? What is it about apps and mobile communication that all organizations can benefit from in today's market? Second of all, we'll answer what does a mobile app look like in the real world, and how did a real organization put mobile technology to work for them? And we'll be doing that through the lens of the Boys and Girls Club of America, of which Elena is a worker there, and she will show us how she was able to implement mobile technology at a conference. And then finally, we'll talk about mobile data and how that can actually not only help us improve the mobile technology that we implement, but also the events and programs on which we are layering that mobile technology. So I want to ask that first question and start out here by asking ourselves, you know, why would someone want to go mobile? What is the benefit of having mobile technology in today's world and using it as a main form of communication. And we actually have a poll for you that we would like you to answer. This is an interactive poll, so we're going to go ahead and put that up on the screen here. And yeah, so we would like to know, yes, all right. So have you ever created an app or any sort of mobile technology? Just yes or no, let us know here. All right, everyone's locking in their answers. I like that. This is interesting. Okay, so it looks like about, all right, this worked out really well. So 75% of people say that they have not implemented an app or mobile technology, and 25% of people say that they have. That's a nice spread there, and I hope that we'll be able to illuminate some new things for those of you that have dabbled in mobile technology, and for those of you that have not, we will certainly be covering all the basics that you'll need to know in order to make a case for this technology if you wish to do so. So, all right, we are going to just reset my slide here, and all right, so we actually worked with the National Guild to poll National Guild members, and we asked them, what channels do you currently use to communicate with your audience? And as you can see from the data here, 98% of people are using email, which I think makes sense. And then 90% of people are using social media to connect with their audiences. And then we can also see that direct mail is also a continuing driver of communication when it comes to communicating within arts organizations. And then there on the very end, you'll see mobile apps. And only about 5% of the National Guild membership said that they had been using mobile apps to communicate with their audiences. Now, something interesting about emails here, this research comes from Litmus. Litmus is an email testing program, and they have found through their data that 53% of emails today are opened on a mobile device, and that's up from just 8% in 2011. So within 5 years, you can see this explosive growth of not only people adopting mobile devices as a part of their everyday technology usage, but now that technology is a major part of how they interact with the communication that's coming to them every day. So while a lot of us are using email, you know, not everyone is, or a lot of us are using email to communicate with our memberships or our audiences. We're not necessarily taking into account the fact that most of those emails are being opened on mobile devices, and you can guarantee that social media is also majorly being consumed within apps as well. So we also asked the National Guild community what the most significant barrier they felt was when it came to cultivating an engaged audience for themselves. And I think it's no surprise to anyone here that a large percentage of people, 46% of people to be exact, said that lack of time was a major factor. And then coming in second was people just weren't sure of the best channel, perhaps, for when it came to reaching people. And then finally, what I was happy to see is that a small percentage of people, only about 6.5% of people, said that the technology was too difficult. So if we think about the numbers that we've seen up into this point, we know that people are communicating with email and social media. We know that most people are consuming that information on mobile devices, but when it comes to actually implementing those things, there's a resource problem. There's lack of time, and there's kind of some confusion about how do I bring together these disparate channels to make one cohesive communication source. And I think that we'll be able to illuminate that for you today. But I want to talk about, you know, when it comes to our modern memberships and our audiences and our communities, there are certain expectations that I think that is quite frankly hard to ignore at this point, and so we should be striving as organizations to meet those expectations. 64% of American adults own a smartphone. It's up 30% in the past 5 years. I think this is probably not a surprise to anyone. And Guidebook actually did a little survey of our clients, and we found that when we asked event planners how much they were spending on printing per event, the majority of people told us that somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000 was the amount of money that they were putting into printing paper. And when you think about it, these are event organizers, so whether or not you host events or you're a community organization, if you kind of take the sum total of your printing budget during the year and think about just what a significant line item that is, and maybe how can we take advantage of mobile technology to reduce that? Well, Guidebook found that also of those people, 50% of those people, the ones that implemented mobile technology found that they were actually able to reduce their printing budget by 50% on average. So, you know, there is this mobile technology out there. Not all of us have the time or the wherewithal to take advantage of it. We know that if we were able to, we might be able to not only consolidate our communication channels, but actually save ourselves some resources in the meantime. Elena, I want to ask you here, you know, when you were thinking about taking your can everyone still hear me? Okay, great. So Elena, again, I was asking, you know, when you were thinking about taking your conference mobile, enacting a mobile app at your event, you know, what were the deciding factors, and what did you know about your audience that said, okay, this is actually a channel that we want to take advantage of?
I think for us there were a couple different main reasons. One of them was just the wide variety of audience members we have, and the second was what you mentioned around audience expectations. So the audience we have at our conference can be anybody from board members, maybe from older generations, and have different levels of comfort with technology, and they really go and expect to have that printed program in hand, all the way down to our younger generation of folks who are there, who are really some of our direct service staff and some of our younger staff in management positions as well. So we know that we wanted to make sure that we were meeting audience expectations. I know that when I personally go to a conference now, I sort of expect to have an app to accompany it, so I can look at the schedule ahead of time. Maybe coming from the airport, you're looking at the schedule to see who's going to be there, and you don't want to wait until you arrive on site to get that hard paper copy. So it's a combination of just wanting to meet our audience where they are, knowing there's a variety of communication methods that are necessary in order to get things in front of them, and also just meeting modern expectations around digital version of a program and schedule accessible.
Elena, I think that's a good point. And you mentioned in particular that when you're attending events, you tend to actually expect an app now when you go to an event. And I think that says a lot about where the events industry in particular has gone over the past couple of years. But I think we can actually sort of zoom out on that viewpoint as well and say that in general, I think people just expect immediacy when it comes to communication these days. We're able to find out most things at a moment's notice, and so if your organization is putting up some sort of barrier, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, when it comes to immediacy of information about your organization, then it tends to frustrate people. So what are we actually talking about when we're saying go mobile? Well, in the context of today's conversation, we're talking about mobile apps. And there are two types of apps that I would like to bring to your attention. You can see on the left here, this is an actual screenshot from the Boys and Girls Club of America's national conference. And so this is the app that Elena helped to enact for her organization. And this was an app that was centered around a specific event. So for the 3 days of the event, this is how people navigated the conference. And the information within the app had very much to do with what was going on at the conference itself. On the right-hand side, you can see another example from an organization that Guidebook works very closely with, JCC. The JCCs of North America have been rolling out apps across the country for several years now that are more of an ongoing organizational app. So this app is for a place. So when people are members of the JCC, they can see the schedule, they can see the fitness programs, they can see their arts programs, and the schedule is actually divided up into programs for adults and youth and family and other community members. And this is an ongoing guide. So as the events guide was attached to a specific event and the event only lasted 3 days, the guide on the right is actually a year-round use case for an organization that has constant information that it needs to get to an actual membership. So in thinking about the types of organizations that are involved with the National Guild, you can imagine that there are certain year-round use cases such as art studios or after-school programs or perhaps camps that could be using this sort of technology, as well as producing organizations that may have one-time events that may be able to take advantage of mobile technology as well. So for example, an art show or a festival or a music festival would be a great implementation of a mobile app. Alina, one of the interesting things that you were talking about is that you did feel as though there was some sort of cultural expectation that you were going to have technology at your event. And I thought one of the interesting things that you said was that although you have different populations who have varying levels of comfortability with mobile technology, it's not necessarily that the app was replacing a communication channel, but that it was adding another communication channel.
Exactly. For us, we know we have to have multiple methods of communication. People are receive a lot of information all the time now. You get a lot of emails, you get social media, you have printed formats, so we know that we have to kind of put things out there in many different formats. So this becomes an addition to our printed program. In our case, we have not decided to cut down on printed programs, but we use this to augment that. And it's interesting to watch from year to year as the number of people you see kind of looking down at their phones versus looking down at the printed program as they walk around an event and kind of navigate their way around. It seems like you're always seeing a few more of the people who are just using their phone each year.
Yeah, I think I can imagine, and I think it's, and we'll actually talk a little bit about data later and how you can actually quantify that change. But I think the important thing about what you're saying, Alina, is that no longer is there one channel by which we can be communicating. Audiences, memberships, communities are expecting a diversity of channels, and adding mobile to that is certainly an important thing. So let's talk a little bit about the specific benefits that you feel immediately from having a mobile app. And one of those is real-time communication. And we're talking about real-time communication. I'm talking about two very specific types of communication. The first one has to do with instantly updating your information at any given moment. So what we're seeing here on the screen now is actually a screenshot of a web browser. And within the web browser is Guidebooks backend. This is what the Boys and Girls Club of America used to create the app for their conference. And you can see the preview of their app there in the center of the screen, and then on the left side are all the modules that live within the app itself. And one of the benefits of going with a platform solution like Guidebook is that you can go into it and update it at any moment. And I think all of us have had the experience of something changing at the last moment or something not going exactly as planned, and when it comes to printed material, you're kind of stuck with what you got. Well, the true advantage of having mobile technology is not only can you update it within the moment, but you can push that update instantly to everyone's mobile device at once, and everyone always has the most up-to-date information. I would argue that perhaps it's not even as easy to do that with a website, but one of the benefits of having mobile technology is that it's in your pocket at any given moment, and people are used to having the most up-to-date information from their mobile device. And you can do that with a mobile app. The second type of communication that we're talking about are push notifications, and technically speaking, these are the notifications that show up on your home screen when you're not necessarily using an app, but an app is trying to notify you that something has occurred. You can see a couple examples on this slide. For example, at this event, a room had changed, and so they wanted to let everyone know the new room number. Or on the right-hand side, there was a survey within this app, And so this conference wanted to let everyone know that they should go complete the survey to tell them what they thought about a particular schedule track. So this, we're kind of talking here about the difference between passive updates and active updates, which mobile technology can cover both. Elena, I was hoping that maybe you had an example of how you were able to either use this passive communication or active communication at your conference through the mobile app.
That was one thing that we really liked about having the app, is it did add some flexibility. There are always going to be last-minute changes to location changes are very common. We were able to accommodate them and send those out right in the moment. There are also reminders that you want to send out about events that you want to make sure you get a good audience participation at, and maybe they haven't seen it, it hasn't been highlighted in other places, so you can send out an instant push notification on that. We were also able to add a last-minute book signing last year, and instead of having to worry about it not being in the program, we sent out a push notification to let people know where it was going to be. Those were kind of the on-site pieces. We also had kind of a major speaker change. About a week in advance of the conference, the Commissioner of Major League Baseball was going to speak at our general session, and that was a very late addition, and the print program had already gone to print, so it was too late to make any changes to that version of it. But instead, we were able to do it in the online version. So that meant the app on the phone, as well as the website that accompanies it, as well as a push notification to the field for anybody to get that information. So this allowed us to kind of mitigate some of the concerns of not having it in the program and make our partner happy in this case. And in some ways, it provided some extra attention for that particular session and that particular speaker, because we were sending out kind of updates, like look what's been added, and sending it out via the app and other means aside from the printed program.
I think that's a great point, is that you can actually use notifications to draw attention to specific information. So if you notice something is lagging, or you're not getting enough attendees at a specific section, or someone is not noticing one of the programs within your app, you can actually draw attention to it by sending a notification and have a little bit of that benefit from the active communication as well. Let's talk a little bit about data and adding a data layer on top of whatever program it is that you're applying your mobile app to. How can you benefit from the data that a mobile app provides? Well, as we talked about two different types of immediate updates, we'll talk about two different types of data as well. And the first one here is a survey. And lots of us are used to using surveys for our organizations. It's how we find out what our members and our communities think about a particular topic or a particular program or a particular event. But up until now, I would argue that the ways of pushing out surveys have not exactly been the best. At best, you could probably send out an email with a digital survey attached, but you kind of have to cross your fingers and hope that people take the initiative to take the survey, and that you get enough results to make it statistically significant. Well, as we're talking about, mobile technology is more of an active technology. People want to return to it. They want to check. They want to see updates. And also, we can communicate directly with people on the home screen of their phone. And so we can encourage people to take mobile surveys to get some of that anecdotal feedback that helps us to continue to improve our events, improve our programs, improve our organizations, and we can also guarantee at the same time that more people are going to be interacting with this. This is a survey from the app that Elena implemented, and you can see that they wanted particular feedback on one session at their event. And so, Elena, how did you get people to interact with this survey?
So the survey function we used for the first time this year, and we really focused on one specific session that was around digital engagement with youth, so it made sense to really use it in the app this time. So we were able to kind of test it in that session. We got a lot of feedback on that particular one. But what we found was that even if you had the survey sitting for other sessions, unless you really promoted it to the people who were in your sessions, or promoted it conference-wide to let everybody know that it was there and they should take it, that we weren't getting a lot of feedback, and it was hard to kind of tie that back. Sometimes there were things in there that were very vague, or it was general feedback, and you weren't sure what session they were responding to. So I would say in the one session that we tested it with, where we really promoted it and asked people to do it and almost had them kind of start it right as soon as they were leaving the session, that it was pretty successful, and we got a lot of great information from that one. but where it wasn't promoted and it wasn't kind of laid out with a plan, we just really didn't get as much that was useful.
Yeah, and I think just generally surveys, you have to ask people to take surveys. They don't normally volunteer their time when it comes to a survey. And the benefit of having it on a mobile phone is that you can push people to it, as well as if you divide it up by session or by program or by individual schedule, you can then start to cut down on the length of the survey, which is one of the things that dissuades people from taking the survey. Let's talk about another type of data that you can get from mobile technology, and that's actual data from the app itself. With Guidebook, you have access to very specific types of information. The first one being, how was the app being interacted with on kind of a global scale? So how many downloads did you have? How many times did people actually open up the app? How many times did they launch items within a particular menu? This is actual data from Elena's event, and you can see right there in the spikes of downloads when they were promoting the app, and then of course you can see the event itself there in the second spike. The other type of data that you can get is data from how people are interacting with the app itself. And so, by measuring the way that people are navigating your app is a representation of your communication that you put inside. And so the way that people are navigating that communication tells you a lot about how they feel about the content. So the top scheduled event for Elena was a general session. So they were able to know that the general session that was the one that was added most to people's personal schedules. The top viewed event was the Alumni Hall of Fame. And even something that I thought was interesting, that the top viewed list item was their complimentary Wi-Fi. I mean, even that is data that would probably not have been obvious to me had I not had this in front of me. And that tells me that the next year I know that people are going to be eager to get to the complimentary Wi-Fi information, and I could actually stash more important information in that module because I know people will be looking at it. And then another interesting thing is, where in the world are people downloading this? If you have an app or you have an organization that's nationwide, it can help you understand where people are interacting with your technology. So a couple of the things that you can answer for yourself and your organization by adding a data layer of mobile technology onto an event or program or organization. Are people using my app? How are people using my app? Who is using my app? And then perhaps most importantly, which we'll touch on later, is what is the return on investment of not only my event, program, or whatever my app is covering, but what is the return on investment of the app itself? For any communication channel, it's important to be able to tell, are you getting out of it what you put in? And for channels in the past, it hasn't necessarily always been obvious, especially when it comes to social or email. There are ways of tracking it, but with mobile technology, that data layer is always going to be available to you, and you can dive into that as granularly as you wish and discover all sorts of insights about your organization or programs. I'd like to move on and talk about the actual implementation of the Boys and Girls Club of America and their app. Elena, could you give us a little brief introduction to the event itself?
Sure. And just so everybody, I'm not sure that everybody is familiar with us, but Boys and Girls Clubs of America is the national headquarters for Boys and Girls Clubs throughout the United States. We're focused on youth development in the after-school environments. And we have about 4,000 clubs who are across the country and overseas on military bases. So as the national headquarters, we represent those clubs and provide a lot of the convening and training and conference events to bring clubs together and share information. The event that we actually use the Guidebook app for is our annual national conference. We've had it actually for over 100 years. A national conference has been going on in some form. It's primarily our Boys and Girls Club leadership and executives who come to this event. So a lot of board members come, a lot of management staff, and I would say about 1/3 of the attendees are youth development professionals who are doing direct service with youth. So a real mixed audience who comes. We use it as an opportunity to roll out new initiatives, provide professional development and networking. And we've been using our app for the last 3 to 4 years, I think. I want to say 4 years ago since we started using an app of some sort.
Great, and I know that you have not always used Guidebook, and you've actually tried out other mobile solutions as well. So what have you learned over those past 4 years in terms of what are the things that are important to you when it comes to using mobile technology?
Well, one of the most important things is to have a very intuitive interface. I think the way people are used to using things like Facebook and other online devices is you just expect for it to make sense without having a lot of instruction. So you want it to make sense. You can go on there, find what you're looking for, easily add it to your Outlook calendar if you want to, and just navigate in a very simple format. When we initially started out with another app provider, it was a little bit clunky and it wasn't terribly intuitive. And we were getting a lot of feedback from that in our conference survey results. People were talking about how the app just wasn't working well. They couldn't find what they were looking for. So when we found Guidebook, and I have to say I actually found it, I went to the Guild's annual conference on community arts a couple of years ago when it was in Los Angeles, and that was when I used Guidebook for the first time and came across it and just felt like it had a much more intuitive method of using on your phone. So that was a key piece of it. We also wanted people to be able to work offline, and that's the difference between, I guess, a native and a web-based app. And what we're using is a native app, so that you don't have to have, once you've downloaded the schedule, you don't have to have internet access to continue to access that schedule information. And that was important because a lot of times we're in hotels, a lot of older hotels, where the internet connectivity is not great throughout. You can be in a meeting space and just not, kind of get bumped on and off the internet. Or there might not be free Wi-Fi. We had it last year, but that's not always the case. So being able to work offline was another key part of our decision making. And then we wanted to accommodate our Boys and Girls Clubs of America branding, which is why we went with the app version that can be housed in the online stores. And that was each year our annual conference look and feel changes a little bit. I think we have an image of that later on. But we did want to have a recognizable image, which is we call them the BGCA knuckles, and that's kind of what we have online. So anybody going to look for the conference from any club across the country is going to say, okay, that's a familiar symbol, and I know that that's what I need to download.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, is that when people were going to download your app, they were actually going to their app store, whether it was the iTunes store or the Android store, and they were downloading the BGCA app, and it looked like your organization. It had the branding, the logo, and everything that said, okay, I know that this is the app that I'm looking for. So let's actually take a look here at what that actually looked like. On the left side, you'll see kind of the home screen here, and one of the folders popped open with focus areas. And Elena, you said that you had 7 different schedule tracks within this conference, and so what otherwise was a kind of a complicated schedule was actually broken down and made easy to navigate through the mobile interface here.
Yes, and that was just to help people, because people come with so many different roles in their organization, to help them kind of navigate the sessions that might be best for them and fit in with their work. And that was definitely helpful. Things that people could look and say, oh, okay, I work in marketing. Let me see all the sessions that are out there related to marketing.
Yeah, and we can see here that you've actually implemented custom icons on the app, and you have your 109th National Conference logo there as well. And so I know that I'm in the right place. I'm trusting that I'm finding the right information and that it's up to date. On the right-hand side here, you'll actually see some details from an exhibitor listing, and it has a rating, it has some more information, it can have links to that exhibitor's online presence, as well as that dropped pin there. If we go to the next slide, it's actually locating it on the exhibit floor, which is on the left-hand side here. You'll see a zoomed-out view of the actual exhibit floor map, and you can see that that vendor has been located there. And so, one of the another benefit of having this mobile technology is an interactive map setup and a custom map setup. So whether you're having people navigate a convention hall or you're having people navigate your building, it can all be housed right there within the app. And I think one of the most important benefits of having mobile technology is the increased levels of engagement that you can benefit from. And on the right-hand side, you can see here that the Boys and Girls Club of America was able to link their Twitter presence within the app itself. And so as people were having a continuing conversation during the actual event, it was all housed within that one app. So you didn't have to leave to go to find the Twitter conversation. You didn't have to go find a map somewhere else. You didn't have to refer to a paper schedule with all of your sessions circled on a very complicated paper schedule. It was all right there in one singular place. And I think that this kind of gets to the heart of the matter, which is just how easy it makes it for an attendee. And while we're on the topic of engagement here, the Boys and Girls Club was also implemented a shared photo album, which is yet again just another fun way to get attendees involved and engaging with the technology. And something as simple as having a shared photo album incentivizes people to come back to your app to see what's changed, what's updated. And I think that this was a really smart move on your part, Elena, to include this, because not only does this make this an informational source, but it makes it an engagement resource as well. And we talked about the branding, and this is the splash screen of the app. So this is what was shown to the user upon opening the app itself. And again, I think you had a lot of success here with the actual branding of the app itself. Elena, I want to talk to you. I mean, we've talked a little bit about keeping information up to date and engagement features. It sounds like it could be a lot of work to not only put this together in the first place, but keep it updated during, if you have a 3-day event, there's a lot of stuff packed into those hours there. How did you actually manage the upkeep of this, and how did your organization put it together?
Well, we consider it part of our overall communication strategy around the conference. So we have one primary contact who manages the content before the conference itself, and then on site, the same person. And this is not her primary job at Boys and Girls Clubs, but she's somebody who's comfortable with technology, that everything is up to date and that it reflects what's in the program itself. And that is something, she's been doing it for a couple of years. I think that also helps in terms of experience. But all the content that we put into the app, we also it usually comes directly from our program, since the majority of it is around sessions and session speakers. So it's edited content. It goes through that same process so that we make sure that whatever we're putting out there is something that's already gone through an editing process, and it's something that we're ready to put out to the general public. So one key piece for us is having that person who can be the primary driver and kind of connect with all the different people inside our organization who need to provide information for it. Since there's quite a few people on the conference management team, but this person is kind of the convener and the one who makes sure that the app reflects what we're putting into our overall conference schedule.
Great. So your organization chose to have a point person, which I think is a really great strategy. And the Boys and Girls Club has a certain level of resources that your particular organization may enjoy or may not enjoy. And I think a thing to keep in mind here is that whether your organization has 1,000 employees or 10 employees, it is possible to implement this for yourself. It's just a matter of, like Elena said, taking the information that you already have, thinking to yourself, how can this what does this look like on mobile? How does it play out in a mobile environment? How can I adapt the information that I already know my community wants to know and put that into a resource that is smaller, so there's a form factor consideration there, but also more compact in the sense of, there's a whole new level of density that you can add. And it's important to think through initially how you're going to lay that all out. And once it's been implemented into an app itself, the upkeep then becomes not that big of a deal, because an initial brainstorming process is gone on beforehand. And if there's kind of one central service owner, as we like to call it, that is taking care of the mobile communication, and this could also be the person that is taking care of your social media or is involved with your current print communication as well, then you know that you have a resource within your organization that you can go to make sure that this continues to be a usable destination for your members, your community, your event attendees. Before we move on to data, the other thing I wanted to talk about, Elena, is that you had actually, this app that you used actually came along with a web version as well. So if people hadn't downloaded it onto their phone, or if they were using a desktop computer, they were able to access all of the same information within their web browser. And you had mentioned that that was a benefit to you as well.
It is. So we've kind of been using this as one of our primary locations for web information about the conference. It's the interface online is great. You can click through the speakers. You can kind of scroll over a session description and get more information or less information. See it in different formats. And for some people, especially if they're not going to the conference, but they're sending staff or they just want to know what's going to be happening there, they may only be looking at it on their laptop or in their office. And we still want to be able to provide information to those people as well. So it's another means of getting to a broader audience, and then another opportunity to get in front of them on their computers as well as on their phones itself. So the website piece of it has actually been really important. We have an internal website that we can use to get information out, but it's just not as flexible in terms of a conference schedule. I mean, we don't have the means of kind of creating something where you can click through a session and get more information directly on something or add it to your calendar. It's just not built that specifically for a conference. So in this case, the guidebook app and the website accompanying it really provides kind of a dual means of communication for us that we've liked to have a lot.
Right, and I think we're coming back here to the theme of having a diversity of channels available to people is only going to benefit you in the long run, because people are then able to consume the information in a number of ways. And it just so happens that the nice thing about digital communication is a lot of the time those destinations are linked. So when you're updating your Twitter account or you're updating your app, that's also being reflected in other places as well, which can cut down some of the time resources. Okay.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Jordan, because it's been so important for us, is that when you are updating, when the website and the app can be updated in one piece, then there's less opportunity for human error, which is just a natural part of any
exactly
location. More something will get missed.
Good point, Elena. Okay, so I want to touch here on a little bit more about data and talking about how you can use the data that you're pulling from your app to actually calculate your return on investment on certain actions. And what are the measurements that your organization can take to make sure that not only your event is successful, your program is successful, your channel of communication is successful, but the app itself. And the first one here is cost savings. So literally, how much money did you save by not having either a paper program or reducing the amount of time that it took to produce something? As we saw earlier in the presentation, 50% of people are telling Guidebook, or people are telling Guidebook that they can cut their printing budgets by 50%. And so there is going to be some sort of resource savings there, and by measuring that, you can see if implementing this was worth it for you. The second one
Jordan,
is...
Jordan, if I could jump in, we had a question come in that I'd like to pass along. As you're talking about cost, someone just wanted a quick sort of sketch for what the costs look like for implementation of something like this. And I know it differs depending on the kind of app they're going to use and the kind of things that you want to be embedded within the app. But if you could maybe give a rough outline for what the resources that go into the startup of this app look like, I think that'd be helpful for the audience.
Yeah, Drew, I think that I'm glad that you brought that up, and thank you to the listener that asked about that. Cost is certainly going to be a consideration for a lot of people here, especially if you're working with a very strict budget, which I know a lot of us are. And so I think it's important to note that when you're looking at different types of mobile communication, and I'll try to give a general answer and a more specific answer here so that you can get an idea of what implementing Guidebook is like, but the more general answer for mobile technology is you have to, it's good to set some goals for yourself before you ever implement this technology to say, okay, what is this going to be worth to my organization to have this extra channel of communication? I know that it's important. I know that there's a population out there that is demanding this from us. And so what is that worth to our communication budget? And that might go as deep as estimating the cost savings that you're going to be able to make and setting some goals in that area before you adopt the mobile technology itself. And then you can take that to the technology providers and work with them to create a solution that works for you. And you know, that might mean doing your homework and figuring out what brackets these different technology solutions sit in. But having an idea beforehand is really, really the key here, and knowing what that is worth to your organization. So what I'll say more specifically is that if you want to test this out, there are solutions out there, including Guidebook, that allow you to do this for free. Most of those solutions are a try it for 14 days kind of thing, so you can get an idea of what it's like to actually build the technology. The unique thing about the Guidebook platform is that it is free forever, up to 200 downloads. So if you wanted to test this out on a smaller population, or you just have a small community to begin with, you can actually log into Guidebook today, set up a guide, publish it this afternoon, and there you go. That's it. With Guidebook, you begin to unlock certain premium features as you reach the paid levels. And if you're interested in the paid levels for Guidebook, you can actually go to guidebook.com/pricing. That's guidebook.com/pricing, and you can see what those various levels are, and you can get an idea of what sort of features you'll unlock as you get into those upper echelons of mobile technology. But I think the takeaway here is if you want to go try this out today and implement it immediately just to see what the immediate benefits are, you are free to do so, and that might help you when it comes to estimating what the value of this is going to be worth for your organization and how much you're willing to spend on it. Okay, another thing that you can measure here is that tells you, is this app worth it? Is this communication channel worth it? Are there increased engagement levels? We saw some examples from Elena's app, for example, the shared photo album, the Twitter integration. What's it worth to you to have interested and a participating audience at any given time? And especially if you have an organization and you're thinking about a year-round use for this and pushing something out to your members, what's it worth to you to be able to engage those members at any given moment? It's not, again, it's the difference between active communication and passive communication. When we send an email, we're kind of at the mercy of when that person checks their email. But when we send a push notification, we're actually getting ourselves right in front of them probably within an instant. And that's not only great for if you need to get something out immediately, but it's also great for drawing attention, like we're talking about. And again, what is the overall impact of this on your organization? Does it lend some brand legitimacy to you? Something that we kind of glossed over is there's a whole sponsorship element to this as well. So if you work with sponsors, you can actually offer them space within your app, and this becomes yet another channel by which you can generate sponsorship dollars. So think about the impact of not only tangible things like how can this add to your bottom line, how can this add to your sponsorship revenue, but how can it make an actual brand impact on your organization. And then finally, we get the benefit of actually measuring attendee satisfaction. And I think that this one right here is worth it in and of itself to be able to say, is there an increase of attendee satisfaction because there is a greater access to information? And again, by using surveys, by looking at your app data, you'll actually be able to quantify whether or not attendees were satisfied with the program, satisfied with the event, satisfied with the festival, if they're satisfied with the way that they're communicating with them on a monthly basis about your programs and events. This gives you the opportunity to finally be able to say on a regular basis, we have a good idea of how our membership, our community, our partners are feeling about the communication and the programs that we're offering. Okay, that is the majority of what we've got here today. I'm going to mention here that if you would like to reach out to any of us, Drew from the National Guild, myself, or Elena from the Boys and Girls Club of America, you can see our email addresses here. So if you have a follow-up question that you'd like to talk to us about after today's event, feel free to email one of us. But while we still have a few minutes, I'd like to open the floor for other Q&A that might have occurred, either for any of the three of us here. Drew?
Yeah, if anyone has a question, feel free to plug it into the chat on the bottom right-hand corner, and we'll pass it along.
I'll just kind of jump in here and say that, one of the most common questions that we get here at Guidebook is, once I've decided to go mobile, use an app, how do I get people to use that thing? Which is, of course, a whole other webinar in itself probably, but here's the short answer that I'll give you today. The most important thing is there's kind of four things that I'll cover. One is to start as early as possible. So especially if you're tying your mobile technology to an event, make sure that you start before the event itself. I would recommend 6 weeks, giving a 6 weeks lead time, and then sort of following up each week after that. Elena, when you were trying to get people to download your app for your event, how did you communicate that, and when did you start doing that?
We use a few different methods. We put a conference program so they could scan that. We also had that printed on signage at the conference event itself. And then before the conference, we sent out access information on communications, like multiple times to have that general. Look for the conference schedule. You can find it using our app, but download it in the iTunes store or whatnot. So it did take some time ahead of time, and I think we would like to do a little bit more of that to increase the usage this year, to kind of before we hit that 6-week mark, but just starting earlier.
Thanks, Elena. Jordan, we had a couple questions come in that I wanted to pass along.
Okay.
So one is basically, both of them actually relate to use cases and how this can be implemented in different ways by different organizations.
Sure.
So one question was specifically about whether this could be adapted for a course catalog, for example. So if a music school has a collection of courses that they want to give their audience a chance to sign up for, could this be a way for people to engage their audience that way? And so basically, any more insights you have on different use cases you've seen outside of just event enhancement, particularly how programs could be affected by this technology, and what engagement strategies this could help boost, specifically in regards to programming or classes.
Great question, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Drew. And I know that most of the members of the National Guild are thinking in this vein. And I think that this goes back to what we were talking about, which is that there's certainly an events use case for this, but there's also that kind of year-round use case as well. We have seen ongoing guides for everything from employee handbooks to, like you've seen with the JCC, for an entire place. We've seen even the Maui Tropical Plantation in Hawaii uses a guidebook app to navigate its visitors around a tour of the grounds. And I think specifically here, the music course catalog is actually a really interesting use of guidebook, and something that I think you could benefit from greatly. You could say, download the app to see our entire catalog, and the way the guidebook is set up, and if you want to go in there and play around with it, you'd be able to create a list of courses and information about your studio. And the great thing about that is that information like that doesn't necessarily change every day, so there will be some setup work on the front end, but then it's just maintenance as the year goes on or as the semester changes over. and you can change your information as you go, but people can refer back to it during the year, and they always know that if there is this destination to go to find out information about the courses, information about the studio itself, that can all live in your app. And so yeah, I think that that's a great use case, and we see plenty of year-round uses like is being described there.
Great, thank you, Jordan.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Feel free to pass them along.
You know, I'll just say that I've seen a lot of interesting things over my past couple of years working here in terms of people getting creative with mobile technology in order to increase their engagement, in order to connect with new segments of populations that that were otherwise inaccessible to them. And so if anyone here today ends up implementing mobile technology or creating an app for themselves or logging into the guidebook system and playing around with it, I would love for you to reach out to me and show me what you've come up with. And if you need some help thinking out a strategy or thinking out what type of content would work best for your organization within something like this, please, by all means, reach out to me, and I would love to have a conversation about that. Drew, do we have any more questions, or should we wrap this up?
Doesn't look like we have any more questions.
Great. I'm just going to take that to mean that we answered everyone's questions. Elena, do you have any final things that you would like to leave our audience with today before we sign off? I think we might be having a little bit of audio trouble with Elena, so I will speak for the both of us by saying that it has been an honor to be here today and to be speaking with you. Thank you for listening. I hope that you were able to get some useful information out of this and that your brains are spinning with how you can now use mobile communication to be better and effective communicators with your populations, your communities, your members, and your attendees. Drew, anything from you?
Yes, thank you so much, Jordan and Elena, for being here today, and thank you to all of you. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. The Guild is going to have many more upcoming webinars this year, so stay tuned. Please fill out the survey at the end of this webinar to help us get a sense of how we can improve moving forward. And just once again, thanks so much. I hope you have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.